Molly. Molly. Where are you?
Doing all the work, you brute.
There you are. Leave it all to me. Shall I, stoke the furnace?
Done.
Hello. Oh, your nose is cold.
I've just come in.
Why? Where have you been?
I had to run down to the village to get some things I'd forgotten. Did you get the chicken netting?
It, wasn't the right kind. I went to another dump, but that wasn't the right kind either. Practically a hell tape wasted. My God, I'm half frozen, too. The car was skidding like anything. You know, the snow's really coming down out there. What you bet we're not snowed up before tomorrow?
Oh, dear, I do hope not. If only the pipes don't freeze.
Well, we'll have to keep the central heating rails stoked up. Not too good. I wish they sent that cut along. You haven't got any too much.
I do so want everything to go well at first. First impressions are so important.
Is everything ready? No one's arrived, I suppose.
No, thank goodness. I think everything's in order. Mrs. Barlow's hooked it early, afraid of this weather, I suppose.
What a nuisance these daily women are becoming. That leaves everything on your shoulders.
And yours. This is a partnership.
So long as you don't ask me to cook.
No, that's my department. Anyway, we've got a lot of tins in case we are snowed up. Giles, do you think it's going to be all right?
You got cold feet, have you? Are you sorry now we didn't sell this place when your aunt left it to you? Instead of having this mad idea about running it as a guest house?
No, I'm not. And talking of a guest house, just look at that.
Pretty good, what?
It's a disaster, don't you see? You've left out the S, Monkwell, instead of Monkswell.
Oh, Lord, so I did. However, did I come by that? But it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, Monkwell is just as good a name.
You're in disgrace. Go and stoke up the central heating.
Across that icy yard? Oh, shall I bank it up for the night now?
No, you don't do that until 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, Polly.
Hurry up. Someone may arrive any minute.
Do you have the rooms worked out?
Yes. Mrs. Boyle, front four-poster room. Major Metcalf, blue room. Miss Casewell, east room. Mr. Red, oak room.
I wonder what all these people are like. Oughtn't we to have gotten rent in advance?
I don't think so.
We're rather mugs at this game.
They bring luggage. If they don't pay, we keep their luggage. It's quite simple.
But I can't help but think that we ought to have had a correspondence course in hotel-keeping or something. I mean, what if their luggage is just bricks wrapped in newspaper? Where should we be then?
They all wrote from very good addresses.
That's what servants with forged references do. Some of these people may be criminals hiding from the police.
I don't care what they are, so long as they are paying us 7 guineas a week.
You're such a wonderful woman of business, Molly.
Attempt to drive. No sporting instinct. Are you Mrs. Ralston? How delightful. My name's Wren.
How do you do, Mr. Wren?
You know, you're not as old as I picture you. I've been thinking of his retired general's widow, Indian Army, and that you'd be terrifically grim and Memsahib-ish, and that the whole place would be simply crammed with Penar's brass. But instead of telling me, quite heavenly, lovely proportions. That's a fake. Ah, but that table's genuine. I'm simply going to love it here. You haven't got any wax flowers or birds of paradise, have you?
I'm afraid not.
What a pity. Well, what about the sideboard? A great, purple, plummy, mahogany sideboard with great solid fruits carved on it?
Yes, we have, in the dining room.
In here? I must see it.
Ah, yes, it's a sideboard. It's quite lovely. It came with the house, you know. Was my grandmother's from so long ago. oh, you better come and get yourself warm.
Absolutely perfect. Real bedrock, respectively. But why go away with the center mahogany table? Little tables just spoil the effect.
We thought our guests would prefer it. This is my husband.
How do you do? Terrible weather, isn't it? Takes one back to Dickens and Scrooge, that irritating Tiny Tim. So boats. Of course, Mrs. Ralston, you're absolutely right about the little tables. I was just being carried away with my feeling for the period. I'm sure if you had a center mahogany dining table, you'd have the right family around. Stern, handsome father with a beard, prolific, faded mother, 11 children of assorted ages, a grim governess, and someone called Poor Harriet, the poor relation who acts the General's dog's body and is very, very grateful for being given a good home.
I'll just take your suitcase up for you. Elk room, right?
Yes.
I do hope it's got a four-poster with little chintz roses on it.
It hasn't.
But it's going to like me much. How long have you been married? Are you very much in love?
We've been married just a year. Wouldn't you like to go up and see your room?
Tick-tock! But I do so like knowing all about people. I mean, I think people are so merry. Don't you?
Well, I suppose some are and some are not.
They're all interesting, because you really never know what someone is like, or what they are thinking. For instance, you don't know what I'm thinking now, do you?
Not in the least.
You see, the only people who really know what other people are like are artists, and they don't know why they know it. But if they are portrait painters, it comes out on the canvas.
Are you a painter?
No, I'm an architect. My parents, you know, baptized me Christopher Wren in hopes that I'd become an architect. Of course, everyone laughs and makes jokes about it. Who knows? Chris Wren may yet have the last laugh. I find your wife most sympathetic.
Indeed.
And really very beautiful.
Oh, don't be absurd.
There isn't that like an English woman. Compliments always embarrass them. European women, you know, take compliments as a matter of course. But English women have all their feminine spirit crushed out of them by their husbands. There's something very boorish about English husbands.
Wouldn't you like to come see your room?
Shall I?
Will you please go and stoke up the hot water boiler?
I'm Giles Ralston, and this is the, Come in, Mrs. Boyle, and get warm by the fire, if you will. Awful weather, isn't it? Is this your only luggage?
Oh, Major. Metcalf, is it? Is seeing to it?
I'll leave the door for him, then.
The taxi wouldn't even risk coming up the drive. It stopped at the gate. The Major and I had to share a taxi from the station, and there was much difficulty in getting that. Nothing ordered to meet us, it seems.
I'm so sorry, Miss Boyle, but you see, we didn't know what train you would be arriving on. Otherwise, of course, we would have had someone standing by.
All trains should have been met.
Okay, my wife will be down in a minute. I will just go and get the Metcalf.
The drive would have at least been cleared of snow. Oh, most offhand and casual, I must say.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Ralston. Yes, I'm sorry.
You are very young.
Young?
To be running an establishment of this kind? You can't have had much experience.
There has to be a beginning for everything.
I see. Quite inexperienced. You know, this is a very old house. I hope you haven't got dry rot.
Certainly not.
You know, a lot of people don't know they have dry rot until it's too late to do anything about it.
This house is in perfect condition.
Could do with a coat of paint. Do you know you have worm in this oak?
Oh, yes, what, Major?
outside. Thought at one time we should fake it. Oh. I beg your pardon. If it goes on like this, I should say we'll have 5 or 6 feet of snow by morning. Not seen anything like it since 1940.
I'll take these suitcases up. Blue and Rose room, right?
I gave Christopher Wren the rose room. He liked the four posters so much. So it's Major Metcalf in the blue room and Miss Casewell or Mrs. Boyle in the oak room.
Could you give me a hand? Thank you.
Oh.
Mrs. Ralston, do you have much sewing difficulty here?
We have a very good local woman who comes in from the village.
Yes, and what indoor staff?
No indoor staff, just us.
Indeed. I was led to believe that this was a guest house in full running order. If I had not thought this was a problem, I never would have come here. I consider your advertisement most misleading. May I ask if I am the only guest? With Major Metcalf, that is?
We have several guests staying here.
And this weather, too. A blizzard, no less. All very unfortunate.
We couldn't very well foresee the weather.
That's not when the snow, and it will bring snow. And what will the robin do then, poor thing? I adore nursery rhymes, don't you? Always so tragic and macabre. That's why children like them.
Allow me to introduce Mr. Wren, Mrs. Boyle.
How do you do? This is a very beautiful house, don't you think so?
I am to the time in my life when the amenities of an establishment are far more important than its appearances. If I had not believed that this was a problem, I never would have come here.
There is no obligation for you to remain here if you're not totally satisfied, Mrs.
No,
Boyle.
indeed, I should think not.
If there has been any misapprehension at all, perhaps it would be better if you left. The roads are not yet locked. I could call for a taxi to return. You know, we've had so many applications for rooms, yes, that we could fill your place quite easily. In any case, we are raising our terms next month.
I don't plan to leave until I have tried this place out. Don't think you can kick me out that soon. Perhaps you would take me to my room, Mrs. Ralston?
Certainly, Mrs. Boyle. Darling, you are wonderful.
That's a perfectly horrible woman. I don't like her at all. I wish you'd turn her out into the snow. Serve her right.
Well, it's a pleasure I've got to forego, I'm afraid. Oh, Lord, there's another of them. Oh, my. Come in.
Afraid my car's bogged about half a mile down the road. Run into a bridge.
No. Any more stuff in the car?
No, I travel light.
All right. Mr. Wren, this is Miss.
Casewell.
Yes. My wife will be down in a minute.
Oh, no hurry. I've got to get myself thawed out. Looks like you're going to be snowed up here. Weather forecast says heavy snows expected. Motor swarms, etc. I hope you've got a lot of provisions.
Oh, yes. Well, my wife's an excellent manager. And if we do run out of tins, we can always use our heads.
We would before we start eating each other, eh?
Any news in the paper? Apart from the weather?
Usual politics. Oh, yes, and a juicy murder.
A murder?
strangled a woman somewhere near Paddington.
Doesn't say much, does it? The police are anxious to interview a man seen in the vicinity of Culver Street at the time. Medium height, wearing a darkish overcoat, a light felt hat, and a lighter scarf. Police messages to this effect have been broadcast throughout the day.
Useful description. Very well fit anyone.
When it says that the police are anxious to interview someone, is that a polite way of hinting that he's a murderer?
Could be.
Who was the woman that was murdered?
Mrs. Lyon. Mrs. Maureen Lyon.
Young or old?
It doesn't say. It doesn't seem to have been a robbery.
I wonder. Oh, Molly, this is Miss Casewell, my wife.
How do you do?
The water's hot if you'd like to come upstairs and have a bath. It's a terrible night.
You're right, I would.
Little Jack Horner sat in a corner eating a Christmas pie. Stuck in his thumb and pulled out a club. What a good boy am I. Am I?
I must hurry back to the kitchen and get on with things. Major Metcalf seems all right. He won't be a problem. It's Mrs. Boyle really frightens me. Anyway, we must have a nice dinner. I was thinking of opening 2 tins of minced beef and cereals, and there's a tin of peas and mashed potatoes, and there's stewed figs and custard. Do you think that will be all right?
Oh, well, I'm sure it will be. Not very original, perhaps, but, you know.
Do let me help. I adore cooking. Why not an omelet? You've got eggs, haven't you?
Yes, we've got plenty of eggs. We keep lots of fowls. They don't lay as well as they should, but we put down a lot of eggs.
And you've got a bottle of cheap any-type wine? You could add it to the minced beef and cereals, did you say? Give it a continental flavor. Show me where the kitchen is and what you've got, and I dare say I shall have an inspiration.
Come on.
Oh, my.
Isn't he sweet? He's put on an apron and he's getting things together. Says leave it all to him and don't come back for half an hour. Will save us a lot of problems if our guests want to do the cooking themselves.
Yes, but why did you give him the best room?
I told you he liked the 4-poster so much.
Oh, he liked the pretty 4-poster. Twelve.
Giles.
I've got no use for that kind, Molly. Besides, you didn't handle this luggage. I did.
Had it got bricks in it?
It had no weight at all. If you ask me, there was nothing inside of it. He's probably one of those young men who go around bilking hotel keepers.
I don't believe it. Anyway, I think Miss Casewell's rather odd, don't you?
Terrible female. If she is female.
It seems rather hard that all our guests should be either unpleasant or odd. But I think Major Metcalf's all right.
Probably drinks.
Oh, do you think so?
No, I don't. I was just feeling rather depressed, all right. Well, at least we know the worst part now. They're all here. Yes.
Who could that be?
Probably the Culver Street murderer.
Giles, don't.
Oh. 1,000 pardons. I am... Where am I?
This is the, Monkwell, Manor Guest House.
Monkswell.
Monkswell.
But what stupendous good fortune, madame. What an answer to prayers. My Rolls Royce, alas, has run into a snowdrift. Blinding snow everywhere. I do not know where I am. I think to myself, perhaps I shall freeze to death. Then I take my little bag, and I stagger through the snow. I see before me big iron gates, a habitation. I am saved. Twice I fall into the snow as I come up your drive, but at last I have arrived, and immediately despair turns to joy. You can let me have a room, yes?
Yes, I think so.
I'm afraid it's a rather small room.
Naturally, you have other guests.
We've only just started this place today.
Charlie,
But what about your luggage?
that is of no consequence. I have locked the car securely.
But wouldn't it be better?
No. I can assure you that on such a night as this, that there will be no thieves abroad. As for me, my wants are very simple. I have all that I need right here in my little bag. Yes, all that I need.
You'd better get thoroughly warm. I'll go up and see about your room. I'm afraid it's a rather cold room, but all the others are occupied.
You have several guests then?
Well, there's Major Metcalf and Mrs. Boyle and Miss Casewell and Mr. Wren and now you.
Yes, me. The unexpected guest. The guest you did not invite. The guest who arrived out of the storm. Who am I? You do not know. Where do I come from? You do not know. Me? I am the man of mystery. But now I tell you this. I complete the picture. There will be no more arrivals and no more departures. By tomorrow, or perhaps even already, we are completely cut off from civilization. No butcher, no baker, no milkman, no postman, no daily papers, nothing and nobody but ourselves. That is admirable. Admirable. It could not suit me better. My name, by the way, is Mr. Perevici. Mr. and Mrs. Ralston. And this is Maxwell Manor Guest House. Good. Maxwell Manor Guest House. Perfect, perfect!
Place.
Everything's got to have a beginning, you know. Excellent breakfast this morning, good coffee, scrambled eggs, homemade marmalade, and all nicely served too. Little woman does it all herself.
Amateurs! There should be a proper staff.
Excellent lunch too.
Corned beef.
But very well disguised corned beef.
Oh.
Red wine it is. Mrs. Ralston promised to bake a pie for us tonight.
You know, these radiators are not really hot. I shall speak about that.
I suppose you shall. Very comfortable bed, too. At least mine was. I hope yours was, too.
It was adequate. Really, I don't see why the very best bed in this house had to have been given to that very peculiar young man.
Got here ahead of us. First come, first served.
Well, from the advertisement, I received a completely different picture of what this place was to be like.
Wow. Regular Tabby's delight.
I beg your pardon?
I mean, yes, I quite see what you mean.
Oh, no, indeed, I shan't stay here long.
No, I don't suppose you will.
Oh, singularly ill-mannered. I shouldn't wonder that he's a bit queer in the head.
Think he's escaped from a lunatic asylum?
I shouldn't be at all surprised.
Giles!
Yes?
Could you shovel the snow away again from the back door?
Coming.
I'll give you a hand, what? Good exercise. Must have exercise.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. What an incredible woman! Doesn't she know anything about housework? Carrying a duster through the front hallway? Aren't there any back stairs?
Oh, yes, nice steps. Very convenient if there were fire.
Then why not use them? Anyway, all Foot should have been down in the morning before lunch.
I gather our hostess had to cook the lunch.
Oh, very haphazard and amateurish. There should be a proper staff.
Hard to get nowadays, isn't it?
The lower class seems to have no idea of their responsibilities.
Poor the lower classes. Got the bit between their teeth, haven't they?
I gather you are a socialist?
I wouldn't say that. I'm not a red, just a pale pink. But I find no interest in politics as abroad.
I gather things are much easier abroad. Anyway, that would solve some of one's problems. So, are you in England for long?
Depends. I've got some business to see to. When it's done, I'll go back.
To France?
No.
To Italy?
No.
Would you mind not having that on quite so loud?
What?
I said, would you mind not having that on quite so loud? I find it rather distracting when one is trying to write letters.
Do you?
If you don't particularly want
It's my favorite music. There's a writing table in there.
Yes, I know, but it's much warmer in here.
Much warmer, I agree.
Ugh.
What do you wish?
Oh,
Hello.
wherever I go, that woman seems to hunt me down. Then she glares at me. She positively glares.
Would you turn that down a bit?
Is that better?
Served its purpose.
What purpose?
Tactics, boy.
Oh, you mean her?
She pinched the best check. I got it now.
You drove her out. I'm glad. I'm very glad. Let's think of things we can do to annoy her, shall we? I wish she'd go away from here.
In this? No hope.
But when the snow melts.
Oh, when the snow melts, lots of things may have happened.
Yes, that's true. Snow's rather lovely, isn't it? So peaceful and pure. It makes one forget things.
Doesn't make me forget.
How fierce you sound.
I was thinking.
What sort of thinking?
Ice on the bedroom jug. Chilblains, raw, bleeding. A thin, ragged blanket. Child shivering with cold and fear.
My dear, that sounds too grim. What is it? A novel?
You didn't know I was a writer, did you?
Are you?
Sorry to disappoint you, but actually I'm not.
Yes? Yes, this is Monkswell Manor Guest House. There was a ring Mr. Ralston can't come to the telephone just now. Who? The Berkshire Police? Oh, yes, yes, Superintendent Hogbed. But that's impossible. I'm afraid he'll never get here. We're snowed up, completely snowed up. The roads are impassable. What? Oh, very well. Hello? Hello?
Molly, do you know where there's another spade?
Giles, the police have just rung up.
Trouble with the police, eh? Serving liquor without a license?
They're sending out an inspector or a sergeant or something.
But you'll never get here.
That's what I told them, but they seemed quite confident that he would.
Nonsense. Even a jeep couldn't get through with this. Besides, what's it all about?
That's what I asked, but he wouldn't say. Just said I was to impress upon my husband to listen very carefully to what Sergeant Crocker, I think it was, had to say, and to follow his instructions implicitly. Isn't it extraordinary?
What on earth do you think we've done?
Do you think it's those black market nylons from Gibraltar?
I did remember to get the wireless license, didn't I?
Yes, it's in the kitchen dresser.
I'd rather near shave with the car the other day, but it was entirely the other fellow's fault.
We must have done something.
Well, I suspect we've ignored some Tim Pot regulation of some ministry or other. You practically can't avoid it nowadays.
I wish we'd never started this place. We're going to be snowed up for days and everyone is crawling
find it from them. I've stoked up the furnace. I've filled the coal scuttles. I'll go chop some kindling. You know, it must be something pretty important to set a police sergeant tracking in all this. It must be something really urgent.
Ah, there you are, Mr. Ralston. Do you know the central heating in the library is practically stone
I'm
cold?
sorry, Mrs. Wells, but we're a bit short of coal.
I am paying you 7 guineas a week here. 7 guineas, and I do not want to freeze.
I'll go stoke it up then.
See that you do. Mrs. Ralston, if you don't mind my saying so, that is a very extraordinary young man you have staying here.
He's an extremely brilliant young architect.
I beg your pardon?
Christopher Wren is an architect.
My dear young woman, naturally I have heard of Sir Christopher Wren. You young people seem to think that no one is educated but yourselves nowadays.
His parents called him Christopher because they hoped he'd be an architect. And he is, or nearly one, so it turned out all right.
Sounds a fishy story to me. I should make some inquiries if I were you. What do you know of him?
Just as much as I know about you, Mrs. Boyle, which is that you are both paying us 7 guineas a week. That's all I really need to know and all that concerns me. It doesn't matter to me whether I like my guests or whether I don't.
You are young and inexperienced, and should welcome advice from someone more knowledgeable than yourself. Anyway, what about this foreigner?
What about him?
You weren't expecting him, were you?
To turn away a bona fide traveler is against the law, Mrs. Boyle. You should know that.
What do you mean by that?
Weren't you a magistrate sitting on the bench, Mrs. Boyle?
All I say is that this Paramacini...
Beware, dear lady, you speak of the devil, and there he is.
I did not hear you come in.
I came in on tiptoe, like this. Nobody ever hears me if I do not want them to. I find that very amusing.
Indeed.
Now, once there was this young lady...
If you'll excuse me, I must see to my letters. I'll see if it's warmer in the drawing room.
My charming hostess looks upset. What is it, dear lady?
The snow's made everything difficult.
Yes, snow can make things very difficult. Or perhaps it can make things very easy.
I don't know what you mean.
No, perhaps there is quite a lot you do not know about running a guest house.
Well, we've only just started, but we mean to make a go of it.
Bravo, bravo.
I'm not such a bad
You are
cook.
without doubt an enchanter. May I give you a little advice, Mrs. Ralston? You and your husband must not be too trusting. Have you references with these other guests?
Is that usual? I always thought they just came.
It is advisable to know a little bit about the people who will be staying underneath your roof. Take, for example, myself. I turn up saying my car has overturned in a snowdrift. For all you know, I may be a thief, a fugitive from justice, a madman, or even a murderer.
Oh!
You see? And perhaps you know just as little of these other guests.
Well, as far as Mrs. Boyle goes,
It is far too cold in the drawing room. I shall write my letters in here.
Allow me to poke the fire for you.
Excuse me, Mrs. Ralston, but is your husband about? I'm afraid the pipes of the downstairs cloakroom are frozen.
oh dear, first the police, now the pipe.
Police?
Police, did you say?
They've rung up just now. They're sending out an inspector or a sergeant or something, but he'll never get here.
A ruddy coal's half stoned, and at this price, well... Hello? Something wrong?
I hear the police are on their way here. Why?
Oh, that's all right. I mean, they'll never get here. My the pigs must be 5 feet deep. Excuse me, may I put these down? Thank you very much.
Ow!
Mr. Ralston,
Yes.
Detective Sergeant Trotter, Berkshire Police. Can I get these skis off and stow them somewhere?
Why didn't you go around the house and meet me at the front door?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Well, I suppose that's what we pay our police force for nowadays, isn't it? To go around enjoying themselves at winter sports?
Why did you send for the police, Mrs. Ralston?
But I didn't.
Who was that man? Where did he come from? He passed the dining room window.
You may believe it or not, but that man's a policeman. A policeman skiing?
This is Sergeant Detective Trotter.
Good afternoon.
You can't be a detective. You're too young.
I'm not quite as young as I look, ma'am.
If you would like, you can study these in the drawing room.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Excuse me, Mrs. Ralston, but may I use your telephone?
Of course, Major Metcalf.
He's very gung-ho.
No brains, you can see that at a glance.
Hello? Hello? Mrs. Ralston, this telephone is dead. Quite dead.
It was all right about half an hour ago.
The line gone was the weight of the snow, I suppose.
So we're cut off now? Quite cut off, that's funny, isn't it?
I don't see anything to laugh at.
No, indeed.
Oh, it's a private joke of my own. The sleuth is returning. Now, we can get down to business. Mr. Ralston. Mrs. Ralston?
Would you like to see some private? If so, we can go into the library.
Oh, no, sir. It'll save time if everybody's present.
Oh, do hurry up and tell us what we've done.
Done, miss? Oh, it's nothing of that kind. It's more a matter of, police protection, if you understand me.
Police protection?
Yes, miss. It relates to the death of Mrs. Lyon, Mrs. Maureen Lyon, of 24 Culver Street, London, West 2. Murdered yesterday, the 15th instant. You might have heard or read about the case?
Oh, yes. I heard about it on the wireless, the woman who was strangled.
Yes, miss, that's the one. Now, the first thing I want to know is if either of you was acquainted with this Mrs. Lyon.
Never heard of her.
You might not have known her by the name of Lyon. Lyon wasn't her real name. She had a police record and her fingerprints were on file, so we were able to easily locate her, identify her. Her real name was Stanley, Mrs. Maureen Stanley. Her husband was John Stanley, who resided at a Long Ridge Farm, not very far from here.
Long Ridge Farm? Wasn't that where those children were?
Yes, sir.
3
The
children.
That's right, miss. 2 boys and a girl. Brought before the court as in need of care and protection. A home was found for them with Mr. and Mrs. Stanley. One of the children subsequently died of ill treatment and neglect. Case made quite a bit of a sensation at the time.
It was horrible.
Mr. and Mrs. Stanning were sentenced to dual terms of imprisonment. Stanning died in prison. Mrs. Stanning served her time and was duly released. Yesterday, as I say, she was found murdered at 24 Culver Street.
Who did it?
I'm getting to that, ma'am. A notebook was found near the scene of the crime. In that notebook was written 2 addresses. One of the addresses was 24 Culver Street. The other was Monkswell Manor.
What?
That's right, sir. That's why Superintendent Oldham, upon receiving this information from Scotland Yard, thought it imperative that I come over immediately and to find out if there is any connection between this house, or anyone in this house, and the Long Ridge Farm.
No, there's no connection at all. It must just be a coincidence.
Superintendent Oldham doesn't think it's a coincidence. He'd have come himself if it had been any way possible. Under the weather circumstances, and as I can see, he sent me with information to get full particulars on everyone in this house and to report back to him by phone, and to take what measures I thought necessary to secure the safety of this household.
Safety? But what danger does he think we're in? Good Lord, he's not suggesting someone's to be killed, yeah?
I don't want to frighten any of the ladies, but frankly, sir, yes, that is the idea.
But why?
That's what I'm here to find out.
But the whole thing's crazy.
Yes, it's because it's crazy that it's dangerous.
No nonsense.
I think it's wonderful.
Seems a bit far-fetched.
Sergeant, is there something you haven't told us?
Yes, Mrs. Ralston, there is. In the notebook that was found, there was also written 3 blind mice, and there was also a note on the dead woman's body, saying, "This is the first," written on it. Beneath that were a picture of 3 blind mice and a bar of music. The music was to the tune of the nursery rhyme, 3 blind mice. You know how it goes. 3 blind mice.
3 blind mice. See how they run. They all run after the farmer's wife. She cut. It's horrible.
There were 3 children and 1 died.
Yes, sir. A boy of 11.
What happened to the other 2?
The girl was adopted by someone. We haven't been able to trace her present whereabouts. The oldest boy would now be about 23 years of age. He deserted from the army. Army psychologists diagnosed him as a bit of a schizophrenic. Queer in the head, that's to say.
They think it was he who killed Mrs. Stanning,
Yes.
and that he's trying to get here and kill one of us?
Yes.
But why?
That's what I've got to find out from you, miss. As the superintendent sees it, there must be some connection. Now you, sir, have stated that you've had no connection with the Longridge farm.
No.
And the same goes for you, miss.
No connection.
What about servants?
We haven't got any servants, which reminds me, Sergeant Trotter, I have to go to the kitchen. I'll be there if you want me.
No, that's quite all right. Now, can I have all your names, please?
Oh, this is quite ridiculous. We are merely staying in a kind of hotel. We only arrived here yesterday.
But you booked your rooms in advance, hadn't you? You'd all planned to come here.
Well, yes. Oh, but Mr.
Paravici. My car overturned in a snowdrift.
Well, what I'm getting at is that anyone who could have been trying to trace your present whereabouts would know that you were all here. Now, there's just one thing I want to know, and I want to know it quick. Which one of you is it that has some connection with that business at a Long Ridge Farm? You're not being very sensible, you know. One of you is in danger. Deadly danger. I've got to know which one that is. All right. I'll ask you one by one. You first, since you seem to have arrived here more or less by accident, Mr.
Paravici. But my dear Inspector, I know nothing of these local affairs of bygone years. I am a foreigner to this country.
Mrs.
Boyle, I don't... Really, I consider it an impertinence. Why on earth should I have anything to do with such distressing business?
You, miss?
Catesworth, Leslie Catesworth. I never heard of the Longridge Farm case. I know nothing about it.
Sir.
Metcalf, Major. I read about it in the papers at the time. I was stationed at Edinburgh then. No personal knowledge.
And you, sir?
Christopher Wren. I was a mere child at the time. I don't even remember hearing about it.
And that's all you have to say? Any of you? Well, you'll have yourself to blame if one of you ends up murdered. Mr. Ralston, may I have a look around the house? Thanks.
My dears, how melodramatic. I do admire the police. Quite the thrill, this whole 3 blind mice business and all. How does the tune go?
Mr. Wren, really?
But don't you like it? But it's the signature tune. The signature tune of the murderer.
Melodramatic rubbish. I don't believe a word of it.
The Just wait, Mrs. Boyle, till I creep up behind you, and you feel my hands on your throat.
Stop! That'll do, Christopher. It's a poor joke anyway. In fact, it's not a joke at all.
But that's just what it is. It's a madman's joke. That's just what makes it so deliciously macabre. If you could just see your faces.
A singularly ill-mannered and neurotic young man.
Where's Giles? He's giving our policeman a conducted tour of the house.
Mrs. Ralston, your friend the architect has been behaving in a most abnormal manner.
Young fellows seem nervy nowadays. Does seem to grow out of it.
I have no patience with people who say they have nerves. I haven't any.
No, I suppose that's just as well for you, Mrs. Boyle.
No one gets his abuse.
You must forgive me. I enjoy myself greatly. I find this art most amusing.
I never did like that man.
Where did he come from last night?
I don't know.
Looks a bit of a spib to me. Makes his face up too, rouge and powder.
I know. Yet he skips about as though he were quite young.
You'll be wanting more wood. I'll get it.
It's only 4 o'clock and yet it's so dark. I'll turn some lights on.
Now where did I leave my pen?
What a horrible little tune that is.
Don't you like it? Reminds me of your childhood. Unhappy one?
I was very happy as a child.
You were lucky.
Weren't you?
No.
I'm sorry.
It was all a long time ago. One gets over things.
I suppose.
What does one? Damned hard to say.
They say that what happens to you when you're a child matters more than anything else.
They say? They say. Who says?
Psychiatrists.
All humbug. And the need for psychiatrists is like cold.
I've never had much to do with them either.
Lucky for you, you haven't. They're all a bunch of hooey. The whole thing. Life is what you make of it. Go straight ahead and don't look back.
One can't always help looking back.
It's all a question of willpower.
Perhaps.
I know.
Perhaps we ought to face things.
Don't give in. Turn your back on them.
But we must. It's the wrong way. We must face things.
Depends on what you're talking about.
Sometimes I hardly know what I am talking about.
The past is only going to affect me in the way I want it to.
Everything seems to be all right upstairs. What's in here? Drawing room.
Would you mind shutting that door? This place is full of rot.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but I've got to get the lay of the land.
Shut the door!
That completes the tour. Nothing unusual or suspicious. I think I'll make my report to Superintendent Ogden now.
You can't phone. The line's dead.
The line's dead. Since when?
Major Metcalf tried it about half an hour ago.
But it was all right when Superintendent Ogden phoned.
Yes. Well, I suppose the line's down with the weight of the snow.
I wonder. It may have been cut.
Cut? But who could cut it?
Mr. Ralston, just how much do you know of these guests of yours?
Well, we don't really know anything about them. They all good actresses. Except for Parapicini, who just turned out as a blue last night. But still, I suppose about ration bills, that sort of thing.
Well, of course, we'll look into that, Mr. Ralston, but not much reliance can be placed on that sort of evidence.
But even if there is someone trying to get here and kill us, we're quite safe now because of the snow.
Perhaps, unless he's already here.
Here? Already? Why?
Why not, Mr. Ralston? Mrs. Lyon was murdered several hours before any of your guests arrived.
Well, except for Mr. Parapicini, they've all booked it in advance.
Well, of course, these crimes were planned.
Crimes? There's only been one crime, in Culver Street. Why do you insist there will be another here?
That it will happen here? I hope to prevent that. That it will be attempted, yes.
I can't believe it. It's so fantastic.
It's not fantastic, sir. It's just facts.
You've got a description of what this man looks like in London?
Intermediate height and intermediate build. Spoke in a whisper. Dark overcoat pulled well up and felt hat. There are 3 dark overcoats here. One of them's yours. 3 felt hats.
I don't believe it.
You see? It's this telephone wire that bothers me. If it's been cut...
I must get back to the kitchen.
Is there an extension?
I beg your pardon. Did you say something?
Yes, sir. I asked if there was an extension to the telephone.
Yes. Up in our bedroom.
Would you mind going and checking it for me? Thank you.
To understand what I may term as the mechanics of fear, you have to study the precise effect produced on the human mind. Imagine, for instance, that you are all alone in your room. It is late in the afternoon. A door opens softly behind you.
Now, Mrs. Ralston, try and think. Think!
I can't think. My head's numb.
Oh, Mrs. Boyle had only just been killed when you got to her. Are you sure you didn't see or hear anybody coming through there that way?
No, no, just the radio blaring out in here. I couldn't think who turned it on so loud. I wouldn't hear anything else with that, would I?
That was clearly the murderer's idea. Or the murderess.
How could I hear anything else?
You might have done. If the killer heard you coming through the kitchen there, he might have skipped through here and left through the hallway there.
I'm not sure. I heard a door creak.
A door? Where?
I don't know.
Think, Mrs. Ralston, please. Upstairs, downstairs, close at hand, left, right, where?
I don't know. I tell you, I don't know. I'm not even sure I heard anything.
Can't you stop bullying her? Can't you
Mr. Ralston, we are investigating a murder. Up to this point, nobody's taken this thing seriously. Mrs. Boyle didn't. Mrs. Boyle is dead. And unless we get to the bottom of this, and quick, mind, there's going to be another murder.
Another death? Why?
Because there were 3 little blind mice.
But why another death here?
Because there were only 2 addresses in the notebook found. One of them was 24 Culver Street. There was only one possible victim there. Here, at Monkswell Manor, there is a much wider field.
Surely it would be too great a coincidence for 2 people, both with a share of the Longridge Farm case, to be brought here. Too great a coincidence, chance.
Think it out. It wouldn't be so great a coincidence under certain circumstances. Now I want to know where each of you was at the precise time Mrs. Boyle was killed. Mrs. Ralston, you have stated that you were in the kitchen preparing vegetables. You came through the door there, turned the radio down, crossed around, and saw Mrs. Boyle and screamed.
Yes. I screamed and screamed. And finally, people came.
Yes, Mrs. Ralston, people came. A lot of people came. All from different directions. Now, Mr. Ralston, when I slipped out the window there to inspect the telephone wire, you'd just gone up to your bedroom. Where were you when Mrs. Ralston screamed?
I was still up in the bedroom. I checked the extension telephone, but that was dead. I looked out the window to see if I could see any sign of the wires being cut, but I couldn't. Shortly after I closed the window, I heard Molly scream and rushed down.
Those simple actions took you rather a long time, did they not, Mr. Ralston?
I don't think so.
You certainly took your time over them.
I was thinking about something.
Very well. Mr. Wren, where were you?
I was in the kitchen, seeing if there was anything I could do to help Mrs. Ralston. I adore cooking. After that, I went upstairs to my bedroom.
You went to your bedroom. Why?
It's quite a natural thing, don't you think? To go to one's bedroom. I mean, one does want to be alone sometimes.
You went to your bedroom because you wanted to be alone.
And I wanted to brush my hair and tidy up.
You wanted to brush your hair.
Anyway, that's where I was.
And you heard Mrs. Ralston scream.
Yes.
And you came down here.
Yes.
Funny that you and Mr. Ralston didn't run into each other on the stairs.
I came down by the back stairs. They're nearer to my room.
Did you go up by the back stairs, or did you come through here?
I went up by the back stairs, too.
I see. Mr. Pettavicini?
I have told you. I was playing the piano with the driver. Through there, Inspector.
I'm not an inspector, sir, just a sergeant. Did anybody hear you playing the piano?
I do not expect so. I was playing very softly with one finger, so.
You were playing 3 blind mice.
Is that so, Mr. Pettavicini?
It is a very catchy little tune. It is, how shall I say, a haunting little tune. Don't you all agree?
I think it's horrible.
And yet it runs in people's heads. Someone was whistling it, too.
Whistling it? Where?
On the archway, on the stairs, or perhaps somewhere upstairs in the bedroom. I am not sure.
Who was whistling 3 blind mice? Are you making this up, Mr. Pettavicini?
No, Inspector. I beg your pardon, Sergeant. I can assure you I will not do such a thing.
Well, go on. You were playing the piano.
With one finger so. And then I hear the radio playing very loudly. Someone is shouting on it. It offends my ears. And then after that, I hear Mrs. Ralston scream.
Mr. Ralston upstairs, Mr. Wren upstairs, Mr. Pettavicini in the drawing room. Miss Casewell?
I was writing letters in the library.
And could you hear what was going on in here?
No, I didn't hear anything until Miss Ralston screamed.
And what did you do then?
I came in here.
Immediately.
I think so.
You say you were writing letters in the library.
Yes.
Yet there doesn't seem to be any unfinished letter on the writing table in the library.
I brought it with me.
Dearest Jessie. A friend of yours or relation?
It's none of your damned business.
Perhaps not. You know, Miss Casewell, if I were writing letters in the library and I heard someone screaming blue murder, I don't think I'd take the time to fold my letter up and put it in my book before coming to see what was the matter.
You wouldn't. How interesting.
Major Metcalf, where were you? You stated you were in the cellar. Why?
Looking around, just looking around. I looked into that cupboard placed underneath the stairs to the kitchen. I saw another door and I opened it. I noticed a flight of steps. I was curious, and I went on down. Nice cellars you've got.
Glad you like them.
Not at all. Crypt of an old monastery, I should say. Probably why this place is called Monkswell.
Major Metcalf, we're not conducting antiquarian research here. We're involved in a murder case. Now, Mrs. Ralston has stated that she heard a door shut with a faint creak. That particular door shuts with a creak. You know, Major Metcalf, it could be that the killer, upon hearing Mrs. Ralston coming from the kitchen, slipped into the hallway and into the cupboard door, closing it after him.
A lot of things could be.
There would be fingerprints on the inside of the cupboard.
Mine are there all right, but most criminals are careful to wear gloves, aren't they?
It's usual, but all criminals slip up sooner or later.
Now I wonder, Sergeant, if that is really true.
But look here, aren't we waiting
Mr.
on...
Ralston, I'm conducting this investigation.
Very well, but the...
Mr. Ralston! I've got to establish opportunity as well as motive. And let me tell you all right now. Each of you has that opportunity.
But look, you speak as though we were all under suspicion. That's absurd.
In a murder case, everybody is under suspicion.
But you think you know who killed that woman at Culver Street. You think it's the eldest of the 3 children of the Longridge Farm case. An abnormally young man who is now 23 years of age. Well, damn it all, there's only one person who fits the bill.
It's not true. It's not true. You've always been against me. You're going to say I committed these murders. Persecution, I tell you. Persecution.
Steady, lad, steady.
It's all right, Chris. Nobody's against you. Tell him it's all right.
We don't praise people, Mr. Ralston.
Tell him you're not going to arrest him.
I can't arrest anybody. To arrest someone, I must have evidence. I haven't got any yet.
Only I think you're crazy. And you too. There's only one person who fits the bill, and only as a safety measure, he should be put under arrest. It's only fair to the rest of us.
Wait, Giles, wait. Sergeant Trotter, could I speak to you for a minute?
Yes, Mr. Ralston. Would the rest of you please go into the dining room?
I'm staying.
No, Giles, you too.
I'm staying. I don't know what's come over you, Molly.
Please.
Now, Mrs. Ralston, what is it you wanted to speak to me about?
Sergeant Trotter, you think that this killer must be the eldest of the 3 children from the Longridge Farm. But you don't know that, do you?
No, we don't know anything for sure. All we know is that the woman who joined with her husband in ill-treating and starving those children has been killed. And that the lady magistrate who sent them there has also been killed. My line that connects me with the police headquarters has been cut, so...
You don't even know that. It may have been just the snow.
No, Mrs. Ralston. I found the place round front. It was deliberately cut.
I see.
Sit down, Mrs. Ralston.
But all the same, you don't know.
No, Mrs. Ralston, but I'm going by probability. Childish mentality. Unstable mentality. Desertion from the army and that psychologist report.
Oh, I know. And therefore it all seems to point to Christopher. But I don't believe it is Christopher. There must be other possibilities.
Such as?
Hadn't these children any relations?
Their mother was a drunk. She left home. She died shortly after they were taken from her.
What about their father?
He was a sergeant in the army, serving abroad at the time. If he's still alive, I'm sure he's been discharged.
But you don't know where he is.
I assure you, Mrs. Ralston, that the police have taken every eventuality into account.
But you don't know where he is at this minute. And if the son is mentally unstable, the father might be also.
It's a possibility.
So if he came home from being a prisoner, perhaps, and found his family gone, his wife died, and his children gone through some horrible tragedy, and one of them had died, he might go off his head a bit and want revenge.
That's only surmise, Mrs. Ralston.
But it's possible.
Yes, it's possible.
So the murderer may be middle-aged or even old.
Yes.
Major Metcalf was frightfully upset when I said the police had rung up.
Major Metcalf?
You know, middle-aged, a soldier. Seems quite nice and perfectly normal, but it mightn't show, might it?
No, Mrs. Ralston. Quite often it doesn't show at all.
So it's not only Christopher who's a suspect, but Major Metcalf as well.
Any other suggestions?
Well, Mr. Paravicini did drop the poker when I said the police had rung up.
No, Mr. Paravicini.
Oh, I know he seems old and foreign and all. And, well, I know it sounds melodramatic, but what if he's disguised?
You're very anxious, aren't you, Mrs. Ralston, that it shouldn't be young Mr. Red?
He seems so helpless somehow.
Let me tell you something, Mrs. Ralston. I've had every possibility in mind since the beginning of this. There was the oldest brother, Georgie, the father. And there was someone else, you know. There was a sister.
The sister?
Yes, Mrs. Ralston. It could have been a woman that murdered Mrs. Lyon. The killer had a coat pulled well up and a hat pulled far down. The killer spoke in a whisper. It's the voice that usually gives the sex away. Yes, Mrs. Ralston, it could have been a woman.
Miss Casewell.
She seems a bit old for the part. There's a very wide field. There's yourself, for instance.
Me?
Yes, and there's your husband.
Giles, don't be ridiculous.
He and Christopher Wren are about the same age. Actual age is very hard to tell, Mrs. Ralston. Just how long have you and your husband been married?
We've been married a year.
And how did you meet?
We met at a dance in London.
Did you meet his family, his people?
He hasn't any people. They're all dead.
They're all dead?
Yes, but oh, you make it sound all wrong. His father was a barrister and his mother died when he was a baby.
You are only telling me what he told you.
Yes, but...
Mrs. Ralston, you'd be surprised how many cases like yours we get. Especially since the war. Families broken up and homes destroyed. Fella comes home to find his family gone. He meets a woman, they settle down and marry. It used to be the families that made the decisions. Now the girl just chooses her man. It could be months or even years before she finds out that he's an army deserter, an absconding bank clerk, or something equally undesirable. How long had you known Giles Ralston before you married him?
3 weeks.
And you don't know anything about him.
That's not true. I know everything there is to know about him. I know exactly the sort of person he is. He's Giles. Why, he wasn't even in London yesterday when the murder took place.
Where was he, Mrs. Ralston? He
had to go across country to get some netting for our chickens.
And did he bring it back with him?
It wasn't the right kind.
Only 30 miles from London, aren't you, Mrs. Ralston? An hour by train? A little longer by car.
I tell you, Giles wasn't in London yesterday.
Or was he? Is this your husband's coat, Mrs. Ralston?
Yes.
Evening news. London. Sold on the streets about 3:30 yesterday afternoon.
I don't believe it.
Don't you, Mrs. Ralston? Don't you?
Molly!
Oh, you startled me.
Where is he?
Who?
The sergeant!
He went up that way.
If only there was somehow I could get away. Somehow, some way. Is there anywhere I can hide?
Hide?
From him.
Why?
But darling, they're also frightfully against me. They're going to say I committed these murders. Particularly your husband.
Never mind him. Listen, Chris, you can't go on running away from things all your life.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's true, isn't it?
Yes, it's quite true.
You've got to grow up sometime, Chris.
I wished I hadn't.
Christopher Wren's not your real name, is it?
No.
And you're not really an architect?
No.
Well, then why did
Did I
you...
call myself Christopher Wren? It just amused me, I guess. And then in school they used to laugh at me and call me Little Christopher Robin. It was all so beastly. I hated being at school.
What's your real name?
We didn't go into that. I ran away whilst I was doing my army service. It was all so beastly, I hated it. You see, I'm just like the unknown murderer. I told you I was the one the specifications fitted. Only my mother.
Yes, your mother.
If she hadn't died, everything would be all right. She would have looked after me, taken care of me.
You can't go on being looked after all your life. Things happen to you and you've got to bear them. You've got to go on just as usual.
One can't do that.
Yes, one can.
You mean, you have?
Yes.
Was it something very bad?
Something so horrible I've never forgotten.
Had it to do with Giles?
No, it was long before I met Giles.
You must have been very young, almost a child.
Perhaps that's why it seems so awful. I try never to think about it. I try to put it out of my head.
So you're running away too? Running away from things instead of facing them?
Yes. I guess perhaps in a way I am. Considering that I never saw you until yesterday, we seem to know each other quite well.
That's odd, isn't it?
I don't know. We seem to have sort of a sympathy for one another.
So you think I ought to stick it out?
Frankly, what else can you do?
I might pitch the sergeant's skis. I can ski quite well.
That would be frightfully stupid, almost like admitting you're the murderer.
Sergeant Trotter thinks I am guilty.
No, he doesn't. Oh, I don't know what he thinks. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. The sergeant. He can make you think things about people. Things that can't possibly be true.
But what is all this?
I won't believe it. I can't believe it.
What can't you believe? Come on, out with it.
You see that?
Yes?
What is it? Yesterday's evening paper. A London paper. It was in Giles' overcoat pocket. But Giles didn't go to London yesterday.
But if Giles was here all day...
That's just it. He wasn't. He had to go across country to get some netting for the chickens.
All right, he probably stopped up London then.
But why shouldn't he tell me he did? Why pretend he'd been racing across the countryside?
Perhaps with the news of this murder.
Giles didn't know about the murder. Or did he? Did he?
Surely you don't think... The sergeant doesn't think...
I don't know what the sergeant thinks. He can make you think things about people. You ask yourself questions and you begin to doubt. You feel that someone you love and know might well be a stranger. That's what happens in a nightmare. You're among friends, and suddenly you turn and look, and they're not your friends anymore. They're different people, just pretending. And perhaps everybody's a stranger.
I seem to be interrupting something.
We were just talking. I really must get back to the kitchen.
I'll come give you a hand.
No, you won't.
Giles.
Tete-a-tetes are not very healthy things at present. You keep out of the kitchen and away from my wife.
But look here!
You keep away from my wife, friend. She's not going to be the next victim.
So that's what you
I've
say.
already said so, haven't I? There's a killer loose in this house, and it seems to me you fit the bill.
I'm not the only one.
I don't see who else does.
How blind are you? Or do you just pretend?
I'm telling you, I'm worrying about my wife's safety.
So am I. I'm not going to leave you here alone.
What the hell are you doing?
Chris, go, please.
I'm not going.
Please go.
I shan't be far away.
Molly, I think you're crazy. Perfectly prepared to shut yourself in the kitchen with a homicidal maniac.
He isn't.
You've only got to look at him to see he's blonde.
He's unhappy, I tell you. He's not dangerous. I'd know if he was. Besides, I can take care of myself.
That's what Mrs. Boyle said.
Oh, Giles, don't.
What is there between you and that wretched boy?
What do you mean by between us?
Perhaps you've met him before. Perhaps you merely suggested to him that you should both come here and pretend to meet for the first time. Oh, cooked up between you, was it?
How dare you suggest these things? Have you got out of your mind?
Rather odd, isn't it, that he should come to an out-of-the-way place like this?
No odder than Miss Casewell and Major Metcalf and Mrs. Boyle should.
I read once in a paper that these homicidal cases could attract women. Looks as though that were true. How long has this been going on? Where did you first know him?
I hadn't set eyes on Christopher Wren until he arrived yesterday.
That's what you say. Perhaps you've been going to London to meet him on the sly.
You know perfectly well that I haven't been up to London for weeks.
Oh, you haven't been to London for weeks? Is that so?
What on earth do you mean? It's quite true.
What's that? That's one of the gloves you were wearing yesterday. You dropped it and I picked it up this afternoon while talking to Sergeant Trotter. Do you see what's inside it? A London bus ticket.
Oh, that.
So it seems that you didn't only go to the country yesterday, you went to London as well. Whilst I was safely racing around the countryside.
Whilst you were racing around the countryside?
Come on now, admit it. You went to London.
All right. I did go to London yesterday. And so did you.
What?
You see this? It's an evening paper.
Where did you get hold of that?
It was in your overcoat pocket.
Anyone could have put it there.
Did they? No. You went to London yesterday.
All right. Yes, I went to London. No, I did not go to meet a woman there.
Didn't you?
What do you mean?
Go away. Don't come
Did you go to London to meet Christopher Wren or not?
Don't be a fool.
Then why did you go?
Well, perhaps I've forgotten why I went.
What's wrong with you, Molly? You're different all of a sudden. I feel as if I don't know you.
Perhaps you never did know me. We've been married how long? A year? But you never knew what I'd done, or felt, or suffered before you knew me.
Molly, you're crazy.
All right, then I'm crazy. Perhaps it's fun to be crazy.
What the hell you...
Now, I do hope you two are not saying more than you'd like. One is so apt to end these lover quarrels.
Lovers' quarrels. That's good.
Quite. I know just how you feel. I have been through this all when I was a younger man. Not been married long, I imagine.
That's none of your damned business.
No business at all. I just came in to say that Sergeant Trotter cannot find his keys and he is very annoyed.
Christopher!
What?
He wants to know if you have moved his keys, Mr. Ralston.
Certainly not.
Mr. Ralston, Mrs. Ralston, have either of you seen my skis?
No, of course not.
Well, they're missing.
What happened you to look for them?
The snow's still lying, Mr. Penavicini. I need help here. Reinforcements. I was going to ski over to the police station at Market Hampton and report on the situation.
And now you can't. Dear, dear, someone has certainly seen to it that you shan't. But there could be another reason, couldn't there?
Yes, what?
Perhaps someone wants to get away.
What did you say when you said Christopher just now?
Nothing. So our young architect has hooked it, has he?
Is this true, Mrs. Ralston?
Well,
Mrs. Ralston, answer the question.
oh, thank goodness there you are. I was afraid you'd gone.
Mr. Red, have you taken my skis?
Your skis, Sergeant? No, why?
Well, Mrs. Ralston seems to
Well,
think
I just thought you might like some exercise.
Exercise.
this is a very serious matter. Those skis were my only connection with the outside world. Without them, we are completely cut off. I want everybody gathered here at once.
I think Miss Casewell is upstairs.
I'll get her.
I left Major Metcalf in the dining room. Major Metcalf! He's not in there now.
I'll try and find him. Hello, wanting me?
Yes, Major, it's a question of my skis.
Mr. Ralston!
Skis? I haven't taken your skis.
Well, they're missing, Major Metcalf. Miss Casewell, have you seen my skis?
Good Lord, no. Why should I?
Well, nevertheless, they are gone. Now, Miss Casewell, which way did you go up to your room?
The back steps.
So you passed the cupboard.
You say so. I don't know where your skis are.
Major Metcalf, you were actually in that cupboard earlier today?
Yes, I was.
At the time Mrs. Boyle was killed.
At the time Mrs. Boyle was killed, I'd gone down to the cellar.
You must remember if they were in the cupboard when you passed through.
I haven't the least idea.
Come now, Major. You must have seen them.
Can't remember.
Major, please, were they there or not?
No good shouting at me, young fellow. I wasn't thinking about any damned skis. I was interested in the architecture of this place. I opened the door and I went on down, so I can't tell you if your skis were there or not.
You realize, Major Metcalf, that you yourself had an excellent opportunity of taking them?
Yes, I grant you that.
The question is, where are they now?
Ought to be able to find them if we all set to. Not a case of hunt the thimble, wacky great things, skis. Supposing we all set to.
Just a minute, Major. That is, you may know what we're intended to do.
I don't get you.
I'm in the position now where I must think like a madman, a crazed murderer. I've got to stay one step ahead of him, or there's going to be another death.
You still don't believe that.
Yes, Miss Casewell, I do. There were 3 blind mice. 2 cancelled out. 1 still to go. There are 6 of you here listening to me. 1 of you's a killer. Another of you is that killer's prospective victim. That's the person I'm speaking to. Any person who's killed twice is not going to hesitate to kill again. Now, if any of you has any share in this business at Long Ridge Farm, please, anything, however slight, come out with it now. I've got to know. All right, you won't. I'll find my killer. That's for sure. I just hope it's not too late for one of you. You can go.
Allow me to come with you into the kitchen, Mrs. Ralston, and we will see what we can concoct together. A charming idea.
I'm helping my wife.
Your husband is afraid for you. Quite understandable under the circumstances. He does not fancy your being alone with him. It is my sadistic tendencies, he fears, not my dishonorable ones.
Oh, I'm sure Giles doesn't.
Take no chances. He is very wise. Can I prove to you, or to him, or to our doggone sergeant, that I am not a homicidal maniac? So difficult to prove a negative. But perhaps I really am.
Don't!
But it's such a gay little. She cut out their tails with a carving knife.
my wife at once.
It's silly of me, but you see, I found her, and her face was all purple. I can't forget.
It's okay. It's not easy to forget things. You're not a forgetting type.
I must go. The kitchen, pies, potatoes going to pieces. Giles, please.
Mr. Pettibicini, what did you say to that poor young lady to upset her?
Me? Oh, just a little innocent fun. I've always been fond of a good joke.
There's nice fun, Mr. Pettibicini, and then there's fun that's not so nice.
Now I wonder, Sergeant, what do you mean by that?
I've been doing a little wondering about you myself. Indeed. And I've been wondering about that car of yours that turned over so conveniently.
Inconveniently, don't you mean, Sergeant?
That rather depends on how you look at the situation. Just where were you bound when your car overturned?
Oh, I was on the way to see a friend.
Name and address of this friend, please. Mr. Pettibicini.
But, Sergeant, does that really matter? I mean, it has nothing to do with this predicament.
We always like to have the fullest of information. You said that the name was...
I didn't say.
No, you didn't say, and it appears you're not going to say.
But there could be so many reasons. And a more discretion, a jealous husband.
You're a little old to be running around, aren't you, Mr. Pettibicini?
Perhaps I'm not quite as old as I look.
That's just what I've been thinking.
What?
Everyone nowadays seems to be trying to look younger. When someone tries to look older, it makes one ask oneself why.
Now really, Sergeant, you have been asking questions of so many other people. And now you are asking questions of yourself?
I might get an answer from myself. I don't seem to be getting many from you.
Quite true. Go on, that is if you have any more questions.
One or two. Where were you coming from?
That is easy, from London.
And where did you stay in London?
I always stay at the Ritz Hotel.
Very nice too, I'm sure. What's your permanent address?
I dislike permanency.
What is your job or occupation?
I play the market.
Stockbroker?
You misunderstood me.
Mr. Pettibicini, you're enjoying this little game of yours, aren't you? Quite sure of yourself, too. Well, I wouldn't be so sure. You're wrapped up in a murder case, and don't you forget it. Murder isn't just fun and games.
Not even this murder? Dear me, you're serious. I always thought policemen had no sense of humor. Is the Inquisition over for the moment?
For the moment, yes.
Then I will return to the drawing room. Perhaps someone has hidden your skis in the grand piano.
Just a minute, please.
Were you speaking to me?
Yes, miss, I was. Would you mind sitting down?
Well, what do you want?
You might have overheard some of the things I was asking Mr. Pettibicini.
I heard them.
Now, I want a little information from you.
What do you want to know?
Full name, please.
Leslie Margaret Catherine Casewell.
Catherine.
I spelled it with a K.
Quite so. Address?
Villa Mariposa, Mallorca.
Mallorca. That's in Italy.
It's an island, a Spanish island.
And your address in England?
Care of Morgan Bank, Leadenhall Street.
No other English addresses?
No,
How long have you been in England?
a week.
Where have you been staying thus far?
The Ludbury Hotel, Knightsbridge.
And what brought you to Monkswell Manor?
I wanted someplace quiet, in the country,
How long do you intend to stay here?
until what I came here to do is done.
And what was that, Miss Casewell? Miss Casewell, question. What was that? What did you come here to do, Miss Casewell?
I'm sorry, I was thinking of something
The
else.
question, Miss Casewell.
I don't see, why I should answer. It is a matter that it concerns me alone, a purely private affair.
But, Miss Casewell, I think that we...
I don't think we will argue about this.
Will you mind telling me your age?
Of course not. It's on my passport. I'm 24.
24.
You think I were older? It's quite true.
Is there anyone in England who can vouch for you?
My bank can reassure you of my financial position. I can refer you to solicitor, very discreet man. Social reference I have none, since I lived most of my life abroad.
In Mallorca?
Majorca and other places.
Were you born abroad?
No, I left England when I was 13.
You know this case well. I can't quite make you out.
Does that matter?
I don't know, it might.
It seems to worry you.
It does worry me. You say you left England when you were 13.
12, 13, thereabouts.
Was your name Casewell then?
It is now.
What was your name when you left England?
It was a long time ago. I don't remember.
Come now, you must.
What are you trying to prove?
I simply want to know what your name was when you left England.
Forgotten.
There are things one does not forget.
Like what?
Despair. Hopelessness.
I dare say.
Tell me your real name.
Leslie Margaret Catherine Casewell.
Catherine, what the hell are you doing here?
I forgot.
I always
wish
thought
to God I'd never come here.
that the police weren't allowed to give people the third degree.
I was merely interrogating Miss Casewell.
You seem to have upset her. What did he do?
Nothing. It's just all of this murder crept up on me all of a sudden. I'm going up to my room.
I don't believe it.
What don't you believe? 6 impossible things before breakfast, just like the Red Queen.
Yes, sir, it's rather like that.
Jimmy, you look as though you've seen a ghost.
I have. Or nearly one. But I think now we can finally get somewhere.
The police have a clue.
Yes, Mr. Wren. The police finally have a clue. Do you know where everyone is? I want them here at once.
Molly and Giles are in the kitchen. I've been helping Major Metcalf look for your skis. We've looked in the most entertaining places, but all to no avail. I do not know where Carabacini is.
I'll see to him. Would you please go and fetch Mr. and Mrs. Ralston? Pedavicini! Mr. Pedavicini!
Yes, Sergeant. What can I do for you? Little Bob policeman has lost his skis and doesn't know where to find them. Leave them alone and they'll come home dragging and murdering behind them.
What is all this?
There. Sit down, Major Metcalf. Mrs. Ralston,
Must I come now? It's very inconvenient.
there are more important things than dinner, Mrs. Ralston. Mrs. Boyle, for instance, won't be wanting any more dinner.
That's a very tactless way of putting things, Sergeant.
I apologize, Major, but I want cooperation, and I intend to get it. Mr. Ralston, Miss Casewell's gone up to her room. Would you please go and get her? Tell her it will only be for a few minutes. My skis have not been found yet, but I have a pretty good idea of who's taken them. I won't say any more at the present time.
Please don't. I always think the ending should be saved for the very last. You know, last chapter.
This is not a game, Mr. Pedavicini.
But that's just what it is. It is a game. To somebody. You think the murderer is enjoying himself? Maybe. Maybe.
What's happening?
Miss Casewell, Mr. Ralston, please sit down. Now, earlier today I took statements from you all as to where you were at the time Mrs. Boyle was killed. Now, those statements were as follows. Mrs. Ralston in the kitchen preparing vegetables. Mr. Ralston upstairs inspecting the telephone line. Mr. Wren upstairs in his bedroom fixing his hair. Mr. Pedavicini in the drawing room playing the piano. Miss Casewell in the library writing letters, and Major Metcalf in the cellar.
Correct.
Now, up to this point, I've had no means of checking these statements. They may have been true, They may not have. The bottom line is that 5 of you were telling the truth and 1 of you was lying. If I can figure out which one it is that was lying, then I'll know who my murderer is.
Nonsense. Someone may have lied for some other reason.
I rather doubt that.
What
Miss
was
Hedgecock.
the idea? You just said you had no means of checking these statements.
But suppose we were all to go through the same actions a second time.
How? Just a reconstruction of the crime.
That's a foreign idea.
Not a reconstruction of the crime, Mr. Pedavicini, but a reconstruction of the movements of apparently innocent persons.
And what do you expect to learn from that?
You'll excuse me, Major, if I don't make that clear at the present time.
You want a repeat performance?
Yes, Mr. Ralston, I do.
Then I will return to the drawing room, and I will pick out the notes of the tune of the murder.
No, Mr. Pedavicini, Mrs. Ralston, come here. Do you play the piano?
Yes.
And do you know the tune of 3 Blind Mice?
Don't we all know it?
Yes, well, then you could pick it out with 1 finger, just as Mr. Pedavicini did.
Yes.
Good. Please go to the drawing room and wait for me to give you the signal.
But, Sergeant, I thought we were each to repeat our former roles.
The same actions will be performed, yes, but by different persons. Thank you, Mrs. Ralston.
I don't see the point.
That is a point. It's a means of checking up on each of your statements, and 1 statement in particular. Now, I'll assign you each to your new posts. Mr. Wren, I understand you're very fond of cooking. Would you please go into the kitchen and check on Mrs. Ralston's dinner? Major Metcalf, would you please go up to Mr. Ralston's room and inspect the telephone line there? Mr. Pedavicini, would you please go to Mr. Wren's room? Go by the back stairs. It's the most convenient way. Miss Casewell, would you mind going down to the cellar? Mr. Wren will show you the way. And unfortunately, someone must repeat my role. I hate to ask it of you, Mr. Ralston, but would you mind?
What are you going to do?
Why, I will be playing the part of Mrs. Boyle.
Taking a bit of a risk, aren't you?
You'll all go to these posts and wait for me to call you.
Pardon, Lord Giles.
No objection to my wearing a coat?
No, sir, I rather recommend it. Take my torch. It's behind the pillar there. Yes, sir, right there. Mrs. Ralston, would you please count to 20 and then begin to play? Mrs. Ralston, please come here.
Yes, what is it? You're looking rather pleased with yourself. Have you gotten what you wanted?
Yes, Mrs. Ralston, I've got exactly what I wanted.
You know who the murderer is, then?
Yes, I do.
Which of them?
You should know, Mrs. Ralston.
I?
Yes, Mrs. Ralston, you've been extraordinarily foolish.
I don't know what you mean.
We policemen aren't as stupid as you think we are. I've known all along that you had personal knowledge of the Longridge farm business. You knew that Mrs. Boyle was the magistrate then. Why didn't you say so?
I don't understand. I wanted to forget.
Your maiden name was Waring, was it not?
Yes.
Miss Waring. You taught schools. In fact, you taught at the very school that those children went to, the Corrigans. Is it true, Mrs. Ralston, that Jimmy, the youngest brother, managed to get a letter posted to you just before he was killed. That letter begged for your help from his kind young teacher. You never answered that letter.
I couldn't. I never got it.
You just didn't bother.
That's not true. I went down ill with pneumonia that very day. The letter was put aside with others. It was weeks afterwards that I found it. By that time, the poor child was dead. Waiting for me to do something, hoping, gradually losing hope. It's haunted me ever since. If only I hadn't been ill. If only I'd known. It's monstrous that such things should happen.
Yes, Mrs. Ralston, it's monstrous.
I thought the police didn't carry revolvers.
The police don't, Mrs. Ralston. I'm not a policeman. You thought I was a policeman because I rang up from a call box in Market Hampton, and I said I was Superintendent Oldman, and I was sending over Sergeant Trotter. Oh, it's been such fun watching you all and pretending to be a policeman. You know who I am, don't you, Mrs. Ralston? I'm Georgie. I'm Jimmy's brother, Georgie. You'd better not scream, Mrs. Ralston, because if you do, I shall fire this revolver. I want to talk to you, Mrs. Ralston. I said I want to talk to you! Jimmy died. That nasty, cruel woman killed him. They sent her to prison, but prison wasn't bad enough for her. I promised I'd kill her one day. I did too. In the fog. Oh, it was great fun. I hope Jimmy knows. I'll kill them all when I've grown up. That's what I said. Because grown-ups can do anything they like. I'm going to kill you in a minute.
You better not. You'll never get safely away now, you know.
Oh, someone's taken my skis. I don't know where they are. But it doesn't matter. I'm tired. I want to go home.
That revolver will make a lot of noise.
Oh, yes, it will, rather. Much better to do it the conventional way and wrap my scarf round your neck. The last little house in the trap.
Georgie. Georgie, you know who I am. Remember the farm, Georgie? And the animals? That fat old pig? And the day the bull chased us across the field? The dogs, Georgie.
Dogs?
Yes, Spot. And Plain.
Kathy? Kathy! Oh, Kathy. Kathy, it is you. Kathy.
In England to find you. Didn't recognize you until you twirled your hair. Well, you always used to. Georgie, you're coming with me. Come with me.
Where are we going?
Don't worry. I'm going to take you somewhere safe. People will look after you. Make sure you don't do any more harm.
Ralston! Ralston!
Molly! Molly! Are you all right?
John,
All right. Whoever dreamt you were Trotter?
he's mad, quite mad.
Yes, but you...
I was mixed up in it all. I taught at that school. He thought I could have saved that
You
child.
would have told me.
I wanted to forget.
Everything's under control now. He'll be unconscious soon with the sedative. His sister's looking after him. Poor fellow's mad as a hatter, of course. I've had my suspicions of him all along.
You knew he wasn't a policeman?
Yes, you see, Mrs. Ralston, I'm a policeman.
You?
Yes, as soon as we got a hold of that note with Monsieur Manor written in it, we thought it was vital to have someone on the spot. When it was put to him, Major Metcalf agreed to let me take his place.
Casewell's sister, then?
Yes, it seems she recognized him just before this last business. Didn't know what to do about it, but fortunately came to me. It's starting to thaw. Help should be here soon. By the way, Mrs. Ralston, I'll go remove those skis. I hid them on top of the 4 post-ups.
And I thought it was Paravicini.
Well, Agatha, they'll examine his car quite carefully. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they found 1,000 or so switch watches in the spare wheel. Yes, Francis, little business, nasty bit of goods. Helen, I believe you thought I were a...
Giles, what were you doing in London yesterday?
I was buying you an anniversary present. We've been married just a year today.
But that's what I went to London for. I didn't want you to know.
Oh, no?
It's a tie. I hope you like it.
Oh, it's wonderful.
You'll wear it.
Oh, yes. I'll wear it.
Darling, what's my present?
I almost forgot. It's a hat.
A hat, but I practically never wear one.
Just for the best.
Oh, darling, it's beautiful. Later, when my hair's properly done.
It's all right, isn't it? The lady in the shop said it was the last thing.
Mrs. Ralston, I'm afraid I put something in the kitchen.
Oh, my pie!
Bet you're wondering why we were waiting.